there is a tape, recorded in a jungle on the last day as the end came. On it, a calm voice speaks to hundreds of people, telling them it is time to die. By the next morning, more than 900 of them were gone. Men, women, and hundreds of children. This is the story of how a promise of paradise became one of the darkest days in modern history. This is Jonestown. To understand the end, you first have to understand the man. His name was Jim Jones. He began as a preacher in the American Midwest in the 1950s. And he was gifted, magnetic, impossible to ignore. He spoke of equality, of a world without racism, without poverty. He built a church, and he called it the People's Temple. And people came, thousands of them. The poor, the lonely, the idealistic, people searching for something to believe in. He gave them a family, a purpose, a place to belong. That was the light he offered. But behind the light, something darker was already growing. By the 1970s, the People's Temple had moved to California, and it had grown powerful. Jones courted politicians. He could fill a hall and deliver votes. For a time, he was a respected public figure in San Francisco. But inside the temple, the rules were tightening. Members handed over their money, their property, their savings. Families were pushed to inform on one another. Loyalty to Jones came before loyalty to anyone else. Those who questioned him were punished. Those who tried to leave were followed. And then the outside world began to ask questions. Former members went to journalists. They spoke of abuse, of control, of fear. Jones felt the walls closing in. So he decided to take his people somewhere the questions could not follow. Deep in the jungle of Guyana, on the northern coast of South America, the temple had leased a remote patch of land. Miles from any town, surrounded by dense, endless forest. They called it Jonestown. And it was sold to the members as a dream. A promised land, a socialist paradise carved out of the wilderness. A place free from the greed and racism of the world they had left behind. In 1977, as the pressure in America grew, Jones moved his people there. Nearly 1,000 of them. They cleared the trees. They built cabins, a school, a great central pavilion. For a moment, it looked as if the dream might be real. But this paradise had a gate, and the gate only locked from the inside. Life in Jonestown was not what they had been promised. The days were long, and the work was brutal. Food was scarce. The heat was relentless. And Jones was always there. His voice played over loudspeakers across the settlement, day and night. Sermons, announcements, warnings. Passports were collected. Letters were read. Guards watched the edges of the camp. Anyone who dreamed of leaving learned there was nowhere to go. And in the darkness, Jones began to prepare them for something. He held drills. He called them white nights. He would gather everyone, and tell them the end was coming, that enemies were closing in. Again and again, he spoke of what he called revolutionary suicide. He was rehearsing them for a day that had not yet come. Back in America, the families of Temple members were desperate. They had not heard from the people they loved. They feared the worst. So they turned to a congressman. His name was Leo Ryan. In November of 1978, Ryan flew to Guyana to see Jonestown with his own eyes. He brought journalists and several worried relatives. At first, the visit seemed almost warm. There was a welcome. There was music. There were smiles. But the smiles were thin. And then, quietly, a note was pressed into a visitor's hand. A few members whispered that they wanted to leave. The mask was slipping, and Jones could feel it. On the 18th of November, Ryan prepared to fly home. With him were the journalists and a small group of Temple members who had chosen to escape. They drove to a small airstrip nearby at Port Kaituma. 2 planes were waiting. And then, from the direction of Jonestown, a tractor and trailer approached. Men from the Temple were aboard. They were armed. They opened fire. Congressman Leo Ryan was killed, along with 3 journalists and one of the people trying to flee. To this day, he remains the only sitting United States congressman ever killed in the line of duty. And back at Jonestown, Jones knew there was no turning back. As night fell, he called everyone to the central pavilion. The tape recorder was running. His voice was calm, almost gentle. He told them the congressman was dead, that soldiers would come, that there was no future left. He told them it was time. A large metal vat had been prepared, filled with a fruit drink, laced with poison. The children were first. They could not consent. They did not understand. This was not a choice. For most of them, it was murder. Some adults went willingly, lost in years of fear and devotion. Others resisted. Others were forced. Armed guards ringed the pavilion. On the tape, you can hear a woman rise and argue, pleading that while there is life, there is still hope. The crowd shouts her down. And then, slowly, the voices fade. By the time it was over, more than 900 people were dead. Around a third of them were children. Jim Jones did not drink the poison. He died from a single gunshot. For a full day, the world did not know. Then the first reports came out of the jungle, and the images that followed stunned the planet. It was, at that time, the greatest single loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act in modern history. A grim record that would stand until one September morning in 2001. After Jonestown, the word cult would never sound the same. And a cruel phrase slipped into everyday language. But that phrase forgets the truth. Most of the dead were not fanatics. They were the poor, the hopeful, the trusting, and the children who had no say at all. So what does Jonestown leave us with? It is a warning about the power of a single voice, about how a promise of paradise can slowly close around you like a trap, how belonging can become control, how hope itself can be turned into a weapon. The people of Jonestown were not fools. They wanted what most of us want: a fairer world, a family, a reason to believe. That is what makes their story so frightening and so important to remember. The jungle has long since grown back over Jonestown, but the tape still exists. And the voices on it still have something to teach us. Next week, we leave the jungle for a different kind of darkness, the kind that hides inside great wealth. Italy, 1973. The teenage grandson of the richest man in the world is snatched from the streets of Rome. The kidnappers demand a fortune, and the richest man in the world says no. Then, months later, an envelope arrives. Inside is a human ear. This was dark Chronicles. Some stories are buried. We dig them back up.